Hey folks, welcome to a podcast about Catholic things. This is Eric, your ambassador of common sense, and I'm here with...
This is Dan, your ambassador of nonsense.
The thing is, we did actually record one last week. Jason and I recorded, but part of it got kind of messed up, so we have to re-record part of it, and we will be putting it on the site, but I'm just behind things right now. So you might actually hear this before you hear mine and Jason's discussion.
But that's okay. Out of order, they still make sense.
Yeah, they'll still make sense.
All right, guys. Hey, before we get started, the beer of the week is Stone. Now, by the way, Stone Brewery is actually a brewery. They've got breweries here in the United States. For example, in San Diego, California, I think there's one. But apparently they also have a presence in Europe, and they've got a beer brewed in Berlin called White Geist. Geist, as people might know, is German for ghost. White Geist Berliner Weisse. That's Weisse. Weisse, as people might know, is German for wheat. So this is a wheat beer. It's a fairly pale one, but the other thing about this beer is that it's what's called a soured beer. So in addition to the normal brewing, they go through a souring process. Some people really like it. Personally, I'm not a big fan of soured beers, but I thought this one was cool because it was brewed in Germany. But you know what I discovered is that if you take a shot of something like Fireball or Jack Daniel's Tennessee Fire or something like that, and add it to a soured beer, it takes the edge off it and makes it taste pretty good.
Takes the edge off. Okay.
Takes the tart edge off of it.
I gotta say, this beer tastes awful.
Well, that's what I said.
It's like drinking a lemon head.
So do you like sucking on lemon heads?
No.
Okay.
You know what? I don't even like sour stuff, so I guess it would make sense that I don't
so
like this.
This would be absolutely the wrong beer for you. Yeah, but this is a soured beer. Some people love it. Like I said, I'm not a fan, but it tastes pretty good with a shot of Fireball in it.
But you can take the edge off it, huh? That's what I want in a drink. I want to take the edge off. I want to drink something so bad that I got to take the edge off.
Well,
that's what I'm shooting for.
Taste. I'm trying to acquire the taste for sours because some of my friends around here like them, and it's like, guys, I just can't get into that. But oh yeah, you got to try this, you got to try that.
How about I'll drink a Budweiser and you guys drink your sours.
Nah, that Budweiser's no good.
Okay.
Anyway,
well, I am not going to finish this beer. I'm going to set it here and guess what I'm drinking.
Are there any of your kids who like you know that they've got that candy that like super pucker sour candy stuff?
Sour Patch Kids.
Like that. If any of your kids like that, let them drink the beer.
I'll ask them if they'll take a drink and then see what they think.
Some about this is good.
Yeah, I'm just gonna stick with Folgers here.
Oh, you've got your coffee going, huh?
Yeah, I've always got my coffee going. Well,
okay, so
lot of things happening, but I didn't even look into current events this week because we're more or less going to be talking about current events today and what's going on in places like Alabama, and there's one in Ohio too. But it's sounding like Alabama's is going to be the one to hit in court for. That's what I'm.
Okay. I know that Alabama.
I think everything in Alabama passed, didn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. They are specifically intending to use their law to challenge Roe v. Wade.
Okay.
So,
big deal.
Kudos to Alabama.
Have you seen Trump's tweet?
I
today?
I didn't see it. My wife read it to me while we were driving.
Okay.
He's very pro-life. He claims 3 exceptions, which 2 of them we would not agree with.
Right.
Are you the same? You're talking about that same tweet, right?
Yeah, with
the rape and incest, right?
Rape and
incest. So the Alabama law, I think, does not admit those exceptions, though, right? It only admits the one in case of a medical need for the life of the mother.
You know what? I think you're right. Which that doesn't really exist. Medical need for the life of the mother.
Not these days. No, that's kind of a what do they call that? It's kind of like it's
straw man.
It's one of those things. Yeah, it's a straw man. It's one of those things. I don't even know if straw man is the right word, because a straw man is usually set up in order to be knocked down. But it's one of those things that people roll out in order to get you to admit that you might have to have some kind of exception, and then they use that as kind of the camel's nose in the tent to get all kinds of other exceptions.
Right.
It's
like as long as you can accept the premise that there would be an occasion where abortion is okay, that opens the door to just saying, all right, it's legal.
Right.
But the first thing is to get you to fold on the principle that innocent life is sacred and should be protected.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on with. I tried to open Twitter so I could read the tweet, and I don't know. Normally the only thing I have on here is Trump, but now all of a sudden, oh, here it is. Okay.
Yeah.
As most people know, and for those who would like to know, I am strongly pro-life, with the 3 exceptions: rape, incest, and protecting the life of the mother. The same position taken by Ronald Reagan. We have come very far in the last 2 years, with 105 wonderful new federal judges, many more to come, 2 great new Supreme Court justices, the Mexico City policy, and the whole new and positive attitude about right to life. The radical left, with late-term abortion and worse, is imploding on this issue. We must stick together and win for life in 2020. If we are foolish and do not stay united as one, all of our hard-fought gains for life can and will rapidly disappear.
Right. Now, some are taking that to be and maybe it is, but some are taking that to be a criticism of the Alabama law, because the Alabama law does not allow the exceptions for rape and incest, and some are taking Trump's quote to say that, well, if you try to go too far and you don't stay united so that we're all on the same page, then we'll end up losing in 2020.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily think he intended it to be that way, but that's.
I don't think he is not behind Alabama, because the Alabama wouldn't. It's not like that would make it illegal to have abortions anywhere, except in Alabama. It would turn the rights over to the states, and that's what we're shooting for right now.
And in fact, that's right. That's what we were talking about. The fact that then we could continue forward having the discussion, not shackled on a national level by a Supreme Court decision. Now it's in the states, and we have our battles in the states. Every state can focus on itself, having those battles.
And
which
I've talked. When I talk to other Christians about abortion, and I've heard a lot of them say that we have to change people's hearts. We can't focus on the laws because the laws probably aren't going to change. And I think that's completely the wrong approach. Well, you always have to focus on the hearts of people. But when it comes to national law, no, you absolutely do have to change the law. Once you change the national law, then you can focus on the hearts of people and try to change the communities around you. But you gotta, if 4-5 men in black robes are controlling the interests of the entire nation, it doesn't matter what you do to the people around you, or how you change them, or how you touch them. Well, it might stop individual abortions from happening, but it's not going to change the country as a whole. And there's still going to be mass murder going, because when you get to certain areas in life, look, things like poverty and depression and despair, those are the kinds of things that cause abortion, and of course rape and incest, which I don't think we even know how many abortions come out of that. I know they say not a lot, but I think that's because incest is usually covered up by abortion.
Oh, well, there's that possibility. And I mean, in terms of most abortions, I mean, when you think of the 1,000,000+ abortions every year, I think probably incest and even rape are probably a small percent of those. I mean, even if it's 10,000 a year, that's still only 1%. So percentage wise, I think they're small, and I think most abortions that occur are convenience abortions. These are women who have been misled down the road of you have to put your career and everything else ahead of the fact that you're a woman and the fact that you can be a mother, and in order to do that you have to be able to get an abortion. So even assuming that that we somehow accept the first part of that lie, that women have to put their careers ahead of their opportunities for motherhood and for the ahead of the basic reality of who they are as women, there's this second part that says, and you absolutely should not have to give up sexual activity without some kind of and have any kind of a consequences associated with that. So consequenceless sex has to be part of the package. Otherwise, you're unfulfilled as a woman. So you've got two parts of the lie. The first part, you have to put your career first. You can't put your womanhood first. And the second part, your fulfillment as a woman means that you have to be able to have sex without consequence, including without having babies. And if something goes wrong with the birth control or whatever, well, then you have to have abortion as a backup.
Folks, if it sounds different, all of a sudden it's because I had to switch computers. So while Danny was talking there, I had to run down to another computer because mine kept locking up. But in response to what he was saying, maybe you'll hear the other talk that Jason and I did first before hearing this. If you do, then you'll know that we touched on that a lot. This notion that sex without consequences is it's pretty bad in society right now. It's like the culture's drenched in, and it's not just sex; it's everything. You should be able to do anything without any consequences, and it's causing all kinds of problems. But abortion is a huge part of it. Mm-hmm. And as Jason would point out, that it goes straight back further than that, back to contraception.
Yeah. Contraception is the
it was like the precursor.
Volley of the opening salvo.
It was like we look at, what's that word when one thing in the Bible is kind of a foreshadowing of something else.
Well, in a when it's like a major foreshadowing, we call it a type.
Okay.
We say the Ark of the Covenant is a type of Mary, or
right.
Abraham is a type of the Father, stuff like that.
Yeah, and Moses was a type of Jesus, or foreshadowing of Jesus, and contraception was kind of I think it was a testing ground to see how quickly they could get this accepted. I get, what? That makes it sound like there's like some kind of conspiracy out there or something. I don't necessarily think that. But
no, but it's a good point, because with contraception, it if you just think of it not as a conspiracy but as a sequence, contraception is what put people in the mindset, the opportunity of sex without consequences. Contraception opened that up and made it something that people started thinking, yes, I should have that.
Yeah,
that's something that I deserve.
Yeah, and we started with contraception, but they soon found out that even with contraception, these slip-ups happen, and now you've got a baby. And it's like, well, I wasn't prepared to deal with a baby. That's why I was using the pill. But there's a baby now, and we got to do something with it, and it's out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
So just kill it.
And what's it's kind of funny, because now we've got these states, some of them seem to be lining up to challenge Roe v. Wade. Really great and awesome, especially Alabama. And we've got pro-life, pro-lifers who are now willing to say, no, we don't even think that there should be exceptions for rape and incest. I mean, why should someone, because they were conceived from a rape, why should they be considered less valuable, less human, less deserving of protection than somebody else? And so we've got people willing to stand and openly oppose even those exceptions. But on the left, they're doubling down in the other direction. So they've got laws like in rhetoric like in Virginia and New York and so forth, where they're saying not only do we want abortion like up to the last minute right before the baby travels through the birth canal, but if we intended to abort the pregnancy, and that's what an abortion is. It's a the original conception was we're going to abort a pregnancy, and the cell of that, a lie, but it was the original cell was you don't really have a baby, you just have a pregnancy that's going to result in a baby. We'll abort the pregnancy before the baby comes about by coming out of the birth canal. So now they have them saying, well, when the intention was to abort the pregnancy, but somehow the baby resulted and now there's an actual baby, well, since your original intention was to abort the pregnancy, you have a right to decide that you're not going to let the baby live either. And what that does, here's the really scary thing about that. It refocuses, because now a right to abortion as conceived by the extreme leftists is no longer a right to abort a pregnancy. It's a right to abort my parenthood.
Yeah.
Now I am a parent. I have a baby. The baby is outside of me, but I don't want to be a parent, so therefore I have a right to let that baby die. Well, why should that conclusion, that decision, that intention apply only if I had that intention 30 minutes ago and not if I developed the intention 30 minutes from now?
Yeah.
Right? Now, here's an even scarier thing before you comment on that. Take that idea, abortion is not a right to terminate a pregnancy, but a right to terminate parenthood, and think in terms of something like an equal rights amendment that says the right to things is not going to be in any way discriminated based on sex. Men and women have the same rights in regards to everything. Well, if a woman has a right to well, the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, a it's actually kind of a dead amendment, but once in a while a state will still vote to try to approve it to the Constitution. It's past the time that it had to get ratified in order to actually become part of the Constitution, but it's still kind of hanging out there, and once in a while a state will vote on it or something. But the Equal Rights Amendment would basically say men and women have to be given equal access to everything. I don't know the exact wording of it.
Okay.
But it's equal rights, men and women, nothing's allowed to be discriminated based on sex. Well, if abortion is, when abortion is a right to terminate a pregnancy, that's inherently only applicable to women. Women are pregnant, men are not pregnant. Obviously, a man can't have a right to terminate his pregnancy. But if abortion is a right to terminate your parenthood, well, why wouldn't that apply to men as well?
So a man could say, yeah, I'll babysit the baby tonight, and then suddenly decide, I don't want this.
Or even,
if it's,
hey, you're carrying my child, I don't want to pay child support, you got to get an abortion.
Yeah. Or after the baby's born, still do it. I mean, the way
in both cases, the man now has that power
extremes
under an ERA if this post-birth abortion stuff is also supported. I mean, when you combine those two ideas and have that subtle shift in what an abortion means, it becomes a very scary thing for women.
The very idea that they're so open about killing a child after it's frightening. I still can't quite wrap my head around that. But so it's good to see Alabama and Ohio and Tennessee and several other states taking these steps, moving us in the right direction. It looks like Alabama's going to be the one to challenge Roe. And here's the thing. Anyone listening to the podcast has heard me talk about Trump, so they know how I feel about Trump. I have a man crush on Trump. I think he's just the greatest. But aside from all the stuff that I like about him, the big number one thing is the abortion. I mean, that's right on top. And I remember when he started running and they said, well, Donald Trump's running. I didn't even know who Donald Trump was. I just saw him say you're fired a couple times on commercials. I'd never even watched that show that he was on. I knew nothing about him. I thought it was a joke. And then I heard him, I heard clips of one of his speeches, and he was, I think he was going against Ted Cruz. And
Oh,
I thought it was
right.
even more of a joke. I thought, there's no way this guy's going to win. And then I actually watched one of his like rallies or campaign rallies or whatever. By the time I finished watching it, I said, this guy's going to be the president. I know for a fact now, this guy's going to be a president. And I knew he would win the nomination, and I knew he would beat Hillary if everything was fair.
Oh, right.
But I thought that
Well, everything was fair that time.
yeah, we're coming up
Doesn't
on
mean it will be next time.
yeah.
But that's here's the thing. The number one evil in America today, without a doubt, is abortion. Abortion is a greater evil in America than any other physical evil. It's a violent evil. It's not a circumstantial evil like poverty and hunger and stuff like that. It's a violent evil, and it's a greater violent evil than gang violence or anything else. It is the number one evil in America today.
Real quick here, 1 second to step in. It's not even violent sometimes. Like slavery was a violent evil. But there were slave owners who may have been just and nice to their, quote, properties.
Slaves. Right. Yeah, that
conceivably could happen, but it's not ever nonviolent in the case of abortion. Every single time it is violent.
Time. That's right. Okay. It's
Go on.
100%. So we have now a president who is working at the executive level. He's working at the Supreme Court level, and he's working rhetorically, by what he says, to fight this evil. There's not a single Catholic out there who doesn't have a moral obligation to support this president. There's not a single issue or collection of issues that can justify not putting your support behind Trump right now. I mean, if somehow during the and I don't imagine there's any real possibility of this, but if somehow during the Republican primaries leading up, somehow there's like a late coming
another guy,
Republican primary guy that looks like he would be every bit as good in terms of accomplishing the pro-life agenda, and then you might have this. Then there could be a moral quandary. Well, gee, which one do I support, him or Trump? But right now there isn't.
Right. And
I don't think that there's a Catholic who is not falling down morally if he fails to put his support behind Trump.
Right. When we were growing up, and we've mentioned before, we grew up in the pro-life community. All of our parents' friends were from the pro-life activist line. And so it was something we lived in our household. And on things like, you remember Sunday nights, Grandpa had enacted this rosary rule. So if you lived in his house on Sunday nights, you had to be there. Unless you were at work, you had to be there for the rosary.
Right.
And every rosary, Grandma was the one who would say the intent. I'm saying Grandma and Grandpa because that's what I call them now because of the kids.
Our mom and dad.
Yeah. Our mom and dad. And
there's a lot more of our kids than there are of us, so we can call them Grandma and Grandpa.
Right. So Grandma would start off with the intentions, and it was always, first of all, to end abortion, but also praying for the politicians, no matter who they were, the president,
and
the
abortion,
congressman.
and praying,
And I don't know, I always looked at that and thought, it's silly. Bill Clinton...
why are you going to pray for Bill Clinton? What good's that going to do?
I mean, he was
a wasted prayer kind of a
late-term abortions and partial birth abortions. That's all Bill Clinton. And she just kept saying, "Hey, you don't know what God can do. Some amazing, and maybe he'll change his mind. Maybe he'll die, and Al Gore will take over, and he'll change his mind. You have to keep praying for it." And and then Bill Clinton was out, George W. Bush was in, but it wasn't. He did a couple tiny things. Yeah, it was the same. It's like, why are we elect these jokers? They put pro-death judges in the Supreme Court. What's the point of voting? And I have to admit, I stopped voting after him. I didn't see any point. I didn't see a point in voting for John McCain. Aside from the fact that he wasn't going to win, I didn't think he wasn't strong. He wasn't
right. He wasn't going to be our champion.
Right, and neither was the other guy. I can't remember. I can't think of his name now. It's the other guy who ran against Obama, Rubio.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. But the point is that after all that prayer, let's face it, this guy named Donald Trump pops up. And when they first started interviewing him, he's like, yeah, I'm pro-life. And they said, well, we look at your history here and you're not pro-life because you say you're for abortion. And he flat out says, I had a conversion. I think he even called it a conversion. And on the one hand, I mean, I'm not going to sit in judgment of someone and say, well, yeah, right. On the other hand, he's been amazingly consistent, sincere. Though.
Yeah. I mean, somebody who's not sincere, you don't expect the level of consistency that we've seen.
Right. And so at first, maybe I was towards the beginning of his campaign, I was just kind of starting to think, hey, maybe this is the guy. And then every day after that, I thought more and more, this is the guy. And I started voting again for the first time in, I don't know, over 10 years. I guess here's where I'm coming to a point. We were praying all that time, end abortion, praying for our politician. Suddenly we've got this guy in there who seems kind of, he's gruff, he's rude, but he's moving the piece forward. He's changing the game for us.
Yeah.
You can't act like this guy isn't the answer to our prayers. Because it looks like he's actually going to. I think if we stand behind him, he will succeed.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to stand behind him.
Well, that's it. Here's the other thing of this, though, that it's very possible, especially, I think right now it's more like, you're seeing small-time incidents. You're seeing people on the streets, pro-abortion people, just walk up unprovoked and punch pro-lifers in the face. You're seeing that. That's happening right now. It goes on in our country. Pro-lifers standing out there carrying a sign. They're not accosting people. They've just got their sign. Maybe they're talking, whatever it is. But
you know what? I gotta break in real quick. Most people don't know this, but we do know it because we grew up in the pro-life community. That has actually been going on for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Just not to the level it is now, but we've seen that happen.
Yeah.
But
sometimes it was a little bit more softly directed, like somebody might walk by and trash their signs instead of punching them in the face or something like that.
But it's getting worse now.
But it's starting to get worse. So the point is this: there's a point at which we need to decide that we have the stomach for the fight, that we have the stomach to continue to be publicly pro-life, because I think once Roe v. Wade gets overturned, right now everybody's focused on, this state does this. Oh, it's unconstitutional. Why? Because of Roe. Well, Roe wasn't really a solidly constitutional decision to begin with, but they kind of have that, and they kind of think of Roe as a backing, and it's just, oh, look how awful they are. They want to fight against the Constitution, and they're assuming that the court's going to uphold this bad decision. So, but once Roe gets overturned, I don't think things are going to get better. I think what's going to happen is that we're going to start seeing a lot of, I'm going to call urban and suburban guerrilla warfare. I think what we're going to do is start seeing people doing things like throwing Molotov cocktails through the windows of, say, pro-life pregnancy problem centers, through the windows of Catholic churches, through the windows of prominent pro-life activists.
Yeah.
I think, and this isn't going to be like it's not going to be like the Civil War where you've got soldiers who are conscripted into an army and then, and battle plans drawn up and clear demarcations and territories that you fight over. It's going to be very messy, and there's going to be lives taken. And it's, the people who are perpetrating it are going to be individuals who are just angry. They've developed a hatred of Christianity and this is the outlet of their hatred.
The thing is,
that's the thing we have to pray for now, is that as a country, we pro-lifers have the stomach to marching forward in that environment.
Definitely. And I think, even now, probably some of the people listening are like, all right, let's get out the tinfoil hats, and you guys are
yeah, you guys
nuts.
What?
So,
guys are off the reservoir. You're off the deep end, whatever.
Look, this, maybe we could be wrong.
Look at the liberal rioting and looting and some of the liberal reactions of violence just in the past 5 years, just since Trump's been elected.
Yeah, and it's not.
You don't think
these
it's
people aren't being arrested
if Roe v. Wade gets overturned?
The laws, the police are not protecting people's property from these rioters. A lot of times, they're being allowed to destroy things, and it's like, yeah, I think you're right, and the big deal here is can we stomach this? And we got to hold together now. I think it's more important to hold together now than it was before, because it's going to get a lot uglier.
Right. And that's, our mother always told us and prepared us, well, you got to be ready for martyrdom.
Yeah.
And of course, when you grow up and you hear the stories of the Christians of the early centuries and of the Catholics of the Reformation who were martyred and that kind of stuff, and you kind of imagine this government machinery where, the local constable is going to come and haul you away to jail and then put you in front of a firing line and say, convert, or we're going to shoot you, or something like that, or we're going to cut your head off, or whatever. That's happening in the Middle East right now, but I don't think it's going to be that way in America. It's going to be more like, hey, by being a known Christian, I'm, some hoodlums could come by my house and throw things through the windows on any given night. And
I'll tell you
people
what,
are going to have that, well, gee, should I just kind of pipe down and shut up for the sake of my children and stuff like that? It's going to be that kind of environment.
Aside from that, I think there's also going to be economic pressure by left-wing business owners who control a lot of money. For example, I know that right now there's pressure on certain banks to not loan money to Second Amendment rights. I don't want to say activists.
Right. Like in New York, they say, well, gee, you shouldn't do business with like the NRA, for example, or something like that.
Right.
Exactly.
I think those kinds of things are going to happen more and more, especially for Christians, and even more so for Catholics.
That's true.
Okay, I have one of a clip from Rush Limbaugh here.
For whatever reasons, and they probably differ from person to person, it's one of the things you can't, it's an intangible. There's a bond. The Trump supporter has a bond, a connection with Trump that only Trump can break. Only Trump can violate it.
So when Rush Limbaugh said this, I happened to be listening that day, and I knew exactly what he was talking about right when he didn't explain how he knows the Trump crowd or the Trump fans. He just, throughout the campaign, he just kept saying, I know these people. Remember those October surprises would pop up, like the tape, the Hollywood tape, and about him talking about girls.
Right.
And he kept saying, this is not going to turn them against Trump. It won't. And he kept saying, I know these people. But I knew why he knew the Trump crowd. And it has to do back, you remember in the 80s when there was no conservative news outlet at all, radio or TV. There was nothing. And I can't remember if I told this story about how I heard Rush Limbaugh.
No,
do you know how?
Not in one of these podcasts. Yeah, I've never heard of it.
Okay, then I didn't. So you were away in college, and I was still kind of in my late teens, and I was still at that stage where, like, your big brother's stuff is cooler than your stuff. So you're in college, I'm getting into your stuff.
Into my stuff.
I'm getting into your stuff. I find this huge box full of audio tapes, and the only thing on them are dates. And I'm thinking, what in the world is this? So I pop these tapes into my stereo, and I start listening to this guy named Rush Limbaugh. And I'm like, holy cows! He's saying all these things that I've been thinking for years, and he's just saying them. And he makes sense. And he's good at it. And he's entertaining on top of it. I fell in love with him. I was like, I don't know, 15, 16, I don't know. But I remember that. And then when you came back from college, I couldn't admit to you.
That you'd gotten into my stuff.
Right. So I couldn't ask about him. And it was over a year later that I finally found him on a Cincinnati channel. And I was able to listen to him and then talk about him to you. So we would talk about Rush Limbaugh.
Okay.
And I remember the excitement because we had found someone like Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah.
Because there were all kinds of things that we thought were common sense that just wasn't in the media.
It's like, nobody seemed to be willing to say it or even think it.
It seemed so normal to be able to say it, and yet no one was. And here comes this guy, and he does it. So, fast forward 20 years, we all know what has to happen in politics.
Yeah.
Well, we've known, it's like we know how bad the government is at everything they do. We know that they have a lot of crap they need to clean up, and yet they don't. And we always think if some guy would just go in there and say, no, do it this way, and do it. And it seems like common sense, and yet it's not happening. Finally, some guy just pops up and just starts doing it.
Yeah.
And he's not afraid to do it, and he's not afraid to talk about it. He just does it. It's the same feeling of excitement, It's like, oh my gosh, we can get behind this guy. And he's not a liar. Or at least he's not lying to us anyway. He's not.
Right.
He says, I'm going to do this, and then he does it. Who the heck ever heard of that? So I knew that's what Rush Limbaugh was talking about because it's the same kind of crowd following Trump, because it's the same group of people who thought, this is so easy. Why won't someone just take charge and do it? And finally, there's a guy who took charge, and he took advantage of that, and that's why people love him. It's this isn't sheep following someone. It's I guess you could compare it to. I think it's like when Jesus was in the desert and he saw this group of people and he had pity on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd.
Oh, right.
And I guess you could say that we were all sheep, but we didn't have a shepherd, and we knew what needed to be done, but nobody was doing it. And Trump filled those shoes. And that's what Rush was talking about. And then he added that little piece about the only person who can turn them away is Trump. And, as much as we liked Rush Limbaugh, there was this point at which I stopped listening to him for a long time. And that was when he did that Playboy interview.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was a mistake. I mean,
I think he knows it too.
I got the argument at the time, and I think the argument was flawed. But
I think
it would have been. I mean, I don't know how much he got paid for doing it. But it would have been, I guess, his argument would have been a little bit more real if he had said, well, okay, I'll do this, but I don't want to receive money for it.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
What I mean? But
I think when he says,
I remember the one.
When he said that about Trump, I think he said it with that in mind. I believe he did anyway. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe he never even thought twice about it. But I know I'm not the only one who stopped listening to him because of that.
For a time, it's
at least for a while.
Come on, Rush, you sold out. Yeah, that sense.
And I think if Donald Trump were to sell out in a real sense, like if he would say, "All right, this time around, I'm going to put a pro-death judge in, and the next one I'll put a pro-life in." If he were to do that, he would have lost all of his following.
Right.
And if he stops fighting for the wall, I think he'll lose a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
And there are some people who's like, well, he's not succeeding, so I'm going to dump him. And I guess there's always those kinds of people. But
okay, yeah. How much sense does that make? He's not succeeding, so I'm going to stop supporting him and support somebody who's going to try to accomplish what 30 minutes ago I was even against. It's like, okay, I'm going to support the guy who's working against my interests instead of the guy who's failing in his quest to support my interests.
Yeah.
That makes no sense at all.
When you get down to it, I mean, there were some politicians like Ted Cruz, and in the beginning of the primaries, I was behind Ted Cruz. But there were a couple people like that who you believed probably did believe in the cause and would try to do everything they could to further the cause. But when it comes to what's actually happening, we have to understand that Trump is alone in Washington.
That's the thing that makes I guess him more impressive than anything else is that he's like, I mean, okay, I know that he's got people that he selects that support him, but it's like the whole government is aligned against him.
Yeah, and it's that's why I say that we have an absolute duty as Catholics not to actively support him, publicly actively support him, because the one thing he said on that stage when he was nominated is, "I will not stop fighting for him."
Yeah,
that means we can't stop fighting for him.
Right,
it's got to go both ways.
Yeah.
And just because you don't like this decision or that decision, some of these more minor things, or maybe because he's not succeeding as quickly as you would like him to succeed, he's still fighting. And as long as he's still swinging, we got to keep fighting. So I think, I guess that's about all I can say about Trump. That's not all I can say about Trump.
No, there's lots of things.
That's all I can say about the Catholic obligation when it comes to Trump and when it comes to politics, because he's the first. Reagan screwed.
Yeah,
and another thing. I mean, we were the pro-life, the national march, the Washington March has been going on for a long time, and it was going on when Reagan was in office, and he never stopped to talk to us.
Well, that's true. That's true. I mean, it's been going on since the Roe v. Wade decision.
Has it?
Yeah.
I didn't know, but I know it was going on when Reagan was there, and Reagan and even Bush, while he was the vice president, didn't address us. It was kind of, well, yeah, there's these people over here who support me, and I am pro-life, but he's not identifying as one of us. And Trump, Pence,
is.
The first year that he was in office, Pence came out and talked to us, which that was the first time a vice president did. And then the next year, Trump himself came down and talked to us.
Yeah.
And said, yeah, I'm one of you. You that you got to admire that. And that's another reason why we've got to stand behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep.
Like I said, you know what? We got to talk a little bit about what the Catholic bishops in Tennessee.
Oh yeah. So the Tennessee and it's kind of moot because the issue is sort of dead at this point anyway. But so back in February, Tennessee had two bills that they were sort of considering bouncing around in their legislature. One of the bills was called a trigger bill, and it was one that basically said, hey, if Roe ever gets overturned, abortion is illegal in Tennessee, period. No heartbeat provision, no rape incest exceptions. They did have a medical emergency for the mother exception kind of a thing, but when they say medical exception, it's one of those where the doctor would be prosecuted and then he would have to make the case for the exception in court. It kind of like
that's the best way to do it.
Like a self-defense for murder kind of a thing. You're accused of murder, and then you make your case for self-defense.
I got to prove why I could kill this guy.
Exactly. So anyway, that was one bill that was bouncing around. The other bill that was bouncing around was a standard heartbeat bill, kind of same as Ohio, Georgia, and several other states. Well, why not pass both bills is my feeling. Okay, put the trigger bill in place, and then put the other bill out there and get... align yourself with the other states who have bills that are just out there ready to march up to the Supreme Court to challenge it. That way, every single one of those states that has one of these heartbeat bills, because they have a law that they are putting forth as a opposition in opposition to Roe v. Wade, if one state makes it into the Supreme Court, all of those other states, because their laws are affected by the decision, I think then they have standing to submit briefs to this court and that kind of stuff. So it lets them come together and present a front to the Supreme Court, and each bringing their own piece of wisdom and so forth. So I think pass both laws. But because they considered it, imprudent, they said that the law was likely to just be overturned, and when it gets overturned, then the state, which are the citizens of Tennessee, then end up having to pay money to the plaintiff, which would be Planned Parenthood typically. So we got to pay Planned Parenthood's lawyers' fees and that kind of stuff. They were against the heartbeat bill. These are the Catholic bishops in Tennessee of 3 different dioceses in Tennessee.
That's sad.
Yeah, and here's the thing: the Catholic bishops, and we've talked about this before. They've always been, backsitters in the pro-life cause. They've always taken a backseat. They've always just almost act embarrassed about people who are taking hold of the front line of the pro-life battle.
And Covington.
So, for example, perfect
Nick
example.
Sanders.
Yep.
Or Sandman.
Sandman, right. So here's these bishops in Tennessee, and they're using words like prudent. We've got to be prudent about how we engage this fight against the evil of abortion. Well, where are their concepts of prudence when they're talking about things like border security? It's like all of these other liberal issues, they want to charge forward. They want to be completely irresponsible. They want to enact a welfare state. They want to open borders. They want to waste taxpayer monies on these welfare programs, and they want to do away with the death penalty and give up its deterrence value, which it does have. All of these other things, they want to be completely irresponsible and imprudent. And then when it comes to abortion, the single biggest evil in America, probably in the world, but clearly the single biggest evil in America, they want to say, let's be prudent.
Yeah, they got to pull the reins back.
Come on.
It's like, it's like...
it's disgusting.
It's like if you're at war with someone and you say, let's not defend this city because we might lose the city and people would die in the process. So let's just give them this.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
I don't know, yeah.
So what happens if we lose? So what? Planned Parenthood gets a little bit more money, but they get money anyway. There was, a possibility that if anything else, they had to spend time suing us.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
mean...
And you know what?
You fight on every front on this one.
It reminds me of 2 things. One is and Catholic bishops should know this better than we should know, which is that God calls us to serve the good, not necessarily to accomplish the good. God accomplishes, we just serve.
Yeah.
We engage the battle, we go forward, we march as soldiers in support of God's will, and we may fail in what we're trying to accomplish in the short term. We let that up to God. We let the broader strategy and how that failure relates into his providence through history. We leave that up to him, but we serve him. So,
right.
Yes, God does call us to exercise certain prudence in certain situations about how we go about doing that and that kind of stuff. But, when you've got something as abjectly evil as abortion, and you've got an opportunity to support something that would say, this is evil, we shouldn't do it, let's not do it, you support that,
Right.
The other thing is, and this is something I don't expect bishops to understand because they've become administrators more than pastors so much, but, look at Mother Angelica and everything she's accomplished. One of her, favorite things to say is that you have to set out to do, I forget exactly how she worded it, but basically you have to set it out to do seemingly impossible things so that you leave room for God to work miracles. Well, these heartbeat bills may be, some ground for God to work some kind of miracle here.
Yeah.
And so the Tennessee bishops are saying, nah, we'll sit this miracle out, is what they're saying.
Yeah. And Mother Angelica would be a prime example of that, who this little old lady creates this giant network that thousands or millions of people can now see.
Yeah.
But
see and hear and the whole
perhaps it's changing lives,
web presence and everything. Right.
But there's a Catholic presence in the media now, and if that little old lady hadn't have taken those steps, there wouldn't be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think all of the other Catholic news services, the national ones and the world ones, probably owe their viability to EWTN and Mother Angelica.
Yeah, certainly.
I mean, I'm thinking of CNA and what's the other? I can't think of it.
Called Formed or something like that.
Oh, that's a new one.
Well, no, that's just an online.
Okay.
One.
Zenith.
It's
Zenith
pretty good.
Is the one I'm thinking of.
Okay.
Yeah, but and then of course there's the Catholic Register, which EWTN now owns.
I didn't know they owned that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know exactly the relationship, but I think they basically bought it. Yeah. I mean, the Catholic Register was always okay, but it was just okay, and now under EWTN, it's expanding and growing.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's about it for me.
That's it for me. Oh. So I do have a couple of items from the land of nonsense.
Okay, well, hold on here. I do too. Well, I mean, we don't have current events.
Yeah.
But
we talked a little bit about current events, but
because that was there's there's two things that I want to point out that are happening. Number one, another good tweet from Donald Trump. If Iran wants to fight, that will be the official end of Iran. Never threaten the United States again. Love that. Love it.
Oh, that's awesome.
About time we had a president with some gonads.
I know.
And, that's another... Look, I know he's rude, but that's part of our American culture.
It is. And,
I don't care what you say. When you study our history... That's what you find. You find guys who just go forth and grab life by the, and just take it. And it's exactly what we needed for a long time.
But even if you might say, okay, there are, some of the things Trump says, while there might have been a more, I don't know, presidential or a that's a less crude way of saying that. The thing is, even if you could come up with a less crude way of saying or a more presidential way of saying the kinds of things he says, the problem isn't that that past presidents have been presidential in how they say them. The problem is, even in a presidential way, past presidents, and I'm talking about recent past, have not been willing to say that.
It. Yeah,
the point is
that
he's
all.
saying it, whether he says it crudely or in a more presidential way. The big story is that he says it.
Right.
Kudos. He deserves kudos for that.
Yeah. So I had to point that out in our quote current events. And then there's one other thing. We don't have any space news, but American undersea explorer Victor Vescovo sets a new world record for the deepest ever CD dive at over almost 11,000.
Okay.
So it's pretty far down there.
So
let's see. He discovered a couple new species, some new crustacean, new type of snailfish, just stuff like that. I think that stuff is somewhat fascinating. The fact that there's life. All right. I'm going to try to not take too much time to say this.
You said 11,000 meters?
Yeah, so 35,000 feet.
That's like Marianas Trench deep. That's like
that's where
the deepest
that's
part
where
of
it
the
was.
Ocean.
Yeah, that's where it was.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's so cool.
So, but okay, I'm fascinated about this stuff because he discovers life down there and new kinds of life and just things we never imagined existed. Mm-hmm. Those things have been down there since the beginning of, well, I guess as far as we can tell, beginning of the mankind anyway. But the beginning of life on Earth, these things have been down there, and they've been just as amazing before as they are now, even though they weren't discovered. And so when people come up with the arguments that for intelligent life on other planets.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know that all creation is there to glorify God. Now,
Right.
so I've heard the argument that, well, okay, so there's all these other planets, and the closer we get to them, the more we learn about them, the more we know that they do glorify God because they're so neat.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't make sense for him to create all of that just for this one species here who might not ever see it. But I would point to Under the Sea, where we're discovering things just now that have been there from the beginning, have been undiscovered, but are
right.
still glorify God in the end when we do discover them. And I think the same thing, I hope anyway, that this type of stuff goes on infinitely throughout the universe as we discover more and more, and it will glorify God without another intelligent species.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's there waiting for us.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, maybe there is life and not intelligent life on other planets.
Right.
Or something like that. Yeah.
Right. It's just it's my thought on that. It's not like I've got an argument against intelligent life on another planet. I just don't think it's not stupid to think that maybe we're the only intelligent ones. It's not not a stretch to think that. And it's because of things like this that make me think that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd never connected those, but that's a good point.
Okay, what do you got?
So, okay, God, first one's just kind of funny. It's more the thought that occurred to me. So, on Firefox, you click open a new tab, and these days they present 3 or 4 trending stories from various places. And there was this one on Vox that said 12 excuses for climate inaction and how to refute them. So I'm going through and reading. I thought, well, that might be interesting. So I'm reading the excuses. One is, isn't it alarmist to talk about the potential extinction of the human species? Isn't it already too late? How do I deal with the fact that it's depressing? Won't it be impossible to get off of fossil fuels? And on and on and on. And at the end, and I gotta call nonsense on the whole article, because the one argument that they don't actually address is, well, what about the fact that you're wrong?
Yeah, there's always that.
I just keep coming back to that. You're wrong. That's why I'm not going to be an activist.
So they're saying 12 excuses that non-activists make.
That believing non-activists make, I guess.
Okay. And they never just say, well, because I don't believe this stuff is true.
It's because I don't believe in mumbo jumbo. That's why I'm not an activist. They don't have a reputation.
It's funny how much goes over their heads. It's insanely.
It isn't
funny.
It's like, yeah, you environmentalists are like in the same category as those flat earthers. That's why I'm not going to become an activist.
Yeah. I just watched a video about flat earthers.
Oh, did you?
It's like getting bigger and bigger. And
it is. It's weird. It is so weird.
It's like this one guy was doing it. I think it's called Behind the Curve, and it's on Netflix. At the end of it, he's talking about
And the show itself is like seriously advocating flat earthness.
No, it is.
Oh, he's
kind of a
about
study of flat earthers and
of
why
the phenomenon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, more than anything. I think in the end, one of the flat earthers is going to conduct this experiment where he can prove that the earth is flat by the way light shines one hole into another hole. Stuff like that. And it doesn't turn out the way he thought it would turn out. And his conclusion is not, we were wrong. He just, that's interesting. I'll have to think about that, why it happened, things like that. And it's the whole thing is so bizarre.
Yeah, I need to put out. I've been meaning to write I would like to have 10, but I probably can't think of 10. But say 10 easy experiments you can perform to prove the Earth is flat, and every one of them is something that when you do the experiment, it doesn't go the flat Earth way, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
But I would put it out there as though
put it like in Reddit or something and see where it goes.
Okay, so The next, and the only other one I have from the land of nonsense. This is too funny. This is trending on like a radio station website. Parents are now regretting naming their children after Game of Thrones characters. Did you realize that was even a thing?
I didn't know anyone would name their child after a Game of Thrones character, but I heard something about it, and I thought, like they're mad at the writers and directors and producers.
Yeah, so they named their kid after some character because of certain qualities, and then the character does something evil in the show.
Yeah,
and they're upset.
That's right. My wife told me about this.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Come on.
That's so...
You could name your kid after a TV fantasy show.
I don't know. It's like,
you know what?
I'm going to name my kid Saruman, and then I just...
You'd be better off naming your kid after Sesame Street characters or something.
You really need to put some more thought into what you name your kid. I'm sorry, but that's insane.
I don't know. You know, it's that kind of stuff that make you think, okay, I mean, with all of our pro-life fight and everything, and we constantly have to push the the battle lines against those who want to say stuff like, well, you should have to get a license to become a parent and stuff, which is what Planned Parenthood wants, and stuff like that.
You almost see
this is the stuff that makes it really hard to keep that part of the fight up.
Right. Yeah. It's just, you think of Darwin Awards and things like that.
Yeah. It's like, well, okay,
Jeez.
it's I don't know. I don't know if Darwin's going to play it, but you know what? When your kid grows up just a little bit, he's going to be really upset that you were so stupid when you picked the name.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, exactly. Step one in destroying your credibility with your kids.
Yeah. Name him Sue, Yeah,
exactly.
We got Johnny Cash here. It was a joke in the song, It was just a joke.
That's right.
You don't really name your boy Sue.
Yeah, and you don't name your girls after Game of Thrones characters. And that's the thing. I mean, they name them after they gave them names that were like names that were made up for the books, not not normal names that people in the books happen to have.
Yeah. I do know a couple parents who named their kids after popular Disney cartoons, like the
seriously
the Little Mermaid one. What was her name? Ariel.
Ariel or something like that.
Yeah, I know someone who named their little girl Ariel. It was.
And so when you met her, did you say, "Why'd you name your kid after a font"?
No, I was I was working at Blockbuster when the Little Mermaid came out.
Oh, okay.
And so it was big, and there was a very young mother who had just had a baby. She named her Ariel. I didn't say anything. I mean, I was just wow.
You can't.
Jeez,
that's
terrible. Of course, it's one of those things.
The kid will have something to say later on.
Yeah, but hopefully it's one of those things where 10 years down the line, nobody even remembers Little Mermaid, and she won't know that she was named after a mermaid, hopefully.
Hopefully.
If you met someone named Ariel, would you assume that they were named after the Disney cartoon?
A Disney movie. If I hadn't seen the movie, I wouldn't.
Well, even now. I mean,
but I guess I don't know. No, I probably wouldn't assume that. If I met someone named Ariel, it's like, oh, okay. I would assume Ariel. That Disney, the name must have existed before Disney even created it.
Yeah.
In fact, I didn't see it as a new name when Disney made it. Not that I'd ever heard it before, but it didn't come off sounding like a new.
What if you named him Ursula?
Yeah, Ursula.
Ursula
that was
the bad guy, wasn't it?
It was.
There's
actually
Ursula.
There's a Saint Ursula.
There's a St. Ursula school here in
it's over in the east
Cincinnati.
East side, right?
I think they're trads, aren't they?
I thought that St. Ursula. Well, there might be two of them, but sure. I thought St. Ursula Academy had been around longer than the trad movement. Maybe not.
Okay,
I might be wrong.
I don't know. For some reason, when I think of that school, I think of those because I must know someone who went there or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the name in this that brought up a particular note in this story was Khaleesi, spelled Khaleesi.
Wow.
Now, you're not going to see that and think, okay, that name is either after a sci-fi fantasy show or an Indian devil god of some kind.
Yeah, everyone's going to know.
You know?
Your idiot parents named you after a fictional character.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no hiding that. Of course, like everybody will call her Kali or something.
Maybe these girls will go change their names as soon as they're able, get them, changed officially to
hopefully
Kaylee or something like that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, or Lisa. I don't know. So that's all I've got.
That's all you got? Okay. Yeah, I guess we're gonna wrap it up, and if hopefully I'll get the podcasts out soon and get them all back in order. But we're running behind, even though we're recording them. They're all behind. So
yeah, there is some work to producing them, and that's
I have been busy as all
you're the
get
guy
out.
for that, so you deserve all the credit.
I've been doing like 60-70 hours a week of work.
Oh man.
So I just haven't had the chance to sit down and do, and I think I barely got Jason to record with me because we kept putting it off because we kept having oh well, we'll get it done.
Yep. Hey,
right.
Everybody, remember, if you are currently carrying a baby and thinking about names,
Ariel.
People do not regret later naming their kids after saints.
Right.
Okay? Saints, you're not going to have some sudden surprise where they go off the deep end and do something you're ashamed of. Name your kid after a saint.
Yeah. But if you don't, there's nothing wrong with, like, you're not going to get made fun of because your name is John or Joe or George.
Yeah, standard name.
So,
pick a family name.
Of course, those are all saints, too.
Yeah, they are. Or you could pick a family name. I picked family names for a lot of my kids.
Right. All right, well, think about what we said.
Everyone, remember, circle the beads.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.